It's getting weirder and weirder every day. Today's shir is sponsored by the Kantor Children. Nishmas, Zaydie Kantor, Chaim, Chaikel, Ephraim, Hakohen. In honor of our father Moshe Kantor, Yoel Bergman, a dedicated member of the Minute Daf family, Sruly Bernstein is sponsoring Leilu Nishmas, my great aunt, Fraida, Raziel, Avrahom, Yitzchock, and Mendel Pilchick is sponsoring Shleima, Klonimus, Benmeleh, Shleima, and Mordechai Binder, Leilu Nishmas, Moshe Levi, by Naftali Weiss. Happiness and success for Sruly Bernstein. And by Yoel Bergman, sponsored by Yoel Bergman, Leilu Nishmas' his grandfather, Simcha Gedalio ben Shrago Faivish on his yortzeit, the true role model for me, the CEO, by learning Daf Yomi. I hope I bring him true nachas, says Yoel Bergman. And the parents of Chodesh, Michael Benmeleh, in memory of his mother, Devora Faige, shmuel, and father-in-law Menachem, Mendel Elchanan, and in merit to make it to Uman Rosh this year. I got a mad email from I guess a Breslover. So Chutzpah made fun of Uman. You took it like that also? Not at all. I didn't make fun of Uman. Okay, whatever. Rabbi Sai, do me a favor. Don't fall off the bandwagon through Shabbos and Tisha B'Av. That's when the Yitzchock gets us. It's these days. Welcome Mati Middeldorf. Welcome Tomer Levi, both from Chutz La'aretz. They're back. And welcome Robert Links, also from Ramat Bet Shemesh on top of the hill. Shkoyach for coming. I forgot to mention, I myself am flying out on Monday night. In other words, there's going to be a shiur Monday. And then comes all the fun stuff, giving shiurim while traveling in New York and Chicago, wedding, Shever Brachas. It's going to be fun. There are going to be shiurim. But this individual, he's conflicted in Casablanca. Dear Daf Abbey, Ravelli always says the best gift we can get him is more Talmidim. So I convinced several people to try the 8-minute Daf. Initially it was going great and they loved it. And then my recruits started sending angry texts that they were falling behind because my guy was only posting videos every few days. It got even worse when the 8-minute Daf shut down for about a month. And my friends blamed me that they were no longer learning. Unfortunately, I had no choice and referred Ravelli's new Talmidim to the Daf review of another Magid Shir. Now that the 8-minute Daf is back on schedule, should I recruit my friends back to the 8-minute Daf? Or it is likely that the videos will stop again when Ravelli travels to America next week. Your help with this dilemma is greatly appreciated. Sincerely, conflicted in Casablanca. I don't have to tell you, I would love to do it every day and not miss. Sometimes it's just impossible. Right. Get your guys, Tzadik in Casablanca, get your guys to watch the whole shir. That Beis Hashem will never stop. And if it does, somebody else know I'm fixed, or Menachem will jump in and do it. This one is by Avi Gargir. He's a big tzaddik who's trying to convert me to Nusach Sfarad every day. He puts a siddur, he changes out my Ashkenaz to Sfarad, and then he says, however you pretend not to be a Rebbe, I would like to prove you otherwise. 1, as numbers prove, you have over 5,000 Hasidim. 2, you have a beard. 3, you see, it's the Hasidim and the beard, they're going to go away in the same time. People give you money. You're a miracle worker. You claim to have no gaiva, but no, it's not true. Is that like a Rebbe? You see, now the guy's going to say, I hate Hasidim. That's the guy's, it's your fault, not mine. You go collecting all over the world. You have Gabayim that go by the name of Yeshua and Yosef, and you started saying stories about Rebbes. When Rebbe says a bracha, he has a whole lot of people that say Amen. And I believe there's a picture of him wearing a shreimo. No point of asking you to keep this anonymous, as you'll tell everyone my name, Avi Gargir. Rabbi said, I said over a story about Yishkoyach Avi. There was a story I said over, because it was in the middle of the sugi. I don't know if I explained myself well. It was like, people complain about silly things, and look what Klal Yisrael had to live through, and I brought as an example. I didn't explain myself. I thought the Leilu understood, but I'm thinking now, I think I missed that one line. But I brought an example of the store in York, in England, and 150 Yidden had to commit suicide to avoid the Goyim. I got many emails about it, so I'm just going to read parts of 3 of them. It says like this: Dear Rebbe, I'm a new Talmud and so taken by the shir. You're so on target, by the way. P.S. Staying the current and not going back. The 8 minute daf is incredible. Chazara. Now, just a little adjustment. The castle where they were in was made out of wood, not the castle that I showed in the picture. Okay. Then comes Ralph Groskopf, who's a teacher. He teaches this stuff. He says the chayrim that I mentioned was not to sleep overnight. I've heard, no responsibility for the authenticity, that Reb Leib Gurwitz would wake up Bacharim when they were on the train traveling through York. He'd wake them up because there's a chayrim to sleep in York. The flowers planted are daffodils, which have 6 petals. So they planted these flowers to cover the Jews over there. And listen to this one. Rabbi Yontov, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Rabbi Yontov of Hyogni, York, was a Baal Toisvis who died at Clifford's Tower. One of the Baal Toisvis died in that tower. And who is he? How do we know him? He's a Talmud of Rebbe Tam. He wrote Omnam Ken HaYoitzer, which we recite at Kol Nidre night. And finally, this is a very long one. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Here's somebody from the Chaver Kedisha. And this Rabbi Schoenberg mentioned to me right after Shir, that in the early 80s, there was a supermarket, the Sainsbury's supermarket, wanted to build a new store in New York. And they started digging, and they found many, many bodies. And they realized that the name of the place there was Jewberry, and that's where they buried a lot of the Yidden and some of the victims of that night. He goes, weiter, they did a whole, the Chaver Kedisha, buried them, beautiful, the whole thing. And then he says, I can't read the whole thing, but next morning we heard on the news that the minister had caught fire in the night, and the minster had caught fire in the night, and only the oldest part of the building was burned. Incidentally, this part that burned was built originally, financed by Jew tax, probably paid by these Kedoshim who had been buried that very day. Kol Tov, David Ansbacher. All right. We are holding Daf Tes. I do want to show you a quick picture of our good friend. Yes? Huh? Oh, Rabbi said there's a good morning, Rabbi Sa, if you want to hear. Pay attention to the screen. All you guys probably know it. Here it is on the screen. You ready? There's no volume. Actually, there's a double volume if you really listen closely. That looks good. That's from the scene. There's 120. I see Nachman Seltzer. Okay, find a different time. We're kind of late. This is Jonathan Austin on a plane learning Torah. Once again, a lot of Hana that the Olam is learning in places that they typically wouldn't have learned without Daf Yomi. So here's Jonathan. Jonathan, by the way, I have Al here. When you have a giant Gemara with a lot of Hebrew letters in it, so even if you wear a baseball cap, people know that you are Jewish. Stama. So Ara. Okay. A very interesting Hashgacha Pratis. There's no more seats. Beautiful, beautiful. No, so we will build out this way. So a couple of things. As a follow-up to yesterday, 2 follow-ups. Yesterday I mentioned, because we were learning the math, and the Gemara asked an interesting kasha. I said it might be like a klutz kasha. And I explained that this is how the Gemara, that's the style of the Gemara. Interestingly enough, I found Taisus here, Daf Tes, just today, this morning, Daf Tes Amud Aleph, Dibra Maskel Menayin Latzi Sukkah, 4 lines down where it becomes wide. The first place where it becomes wide, and Taisus says like this, even though he knew this reason, Urcha de Hashas, it's the style of the Shas, Lefarish Dvarav, to explain its words, Derech Kashi V'Teretz. It goes in a kasha and teretz. It doesn't mean it's a real kasha. It doesn't really mean it's a way to, instead of explaining it, it says question, answer, but it's not a real kasha. Okay, now I have something amazing. Literally amazing. This is going to blow you away. Yesterday, when I was preparing the sugya of pi, I remembered I said once a Vilna Gaon, and I couldn't recall it, and I couldn't find it. And after Shir, immediately after Shir, Monty Frankel and some other new guy, what's your name? I forgot your name. Ari what? Ari Green. A new guy, welcome him, who's sitting actually right next to Monty right now. He's been here for 2 years in the Minyan, and he just started showing up to the shir.
Who's here also.
He's sitting by Shmuel. They both came over to me, and during the day I received numerous emails again. And it goes like this. We're talking about pi. And this is the genius of the Vilna Gaon. You're not going to believe this. Where's the whole pasuk of Pi? In the pasuk of Yam Shleima. Yam Shleima were a bunch of bulls in the Beis Hamikdash, 12 bulls, and there was a mikvah on top of it, a square and then a circle, and the Torah describes it. The pasuk describes it. That's where we learn Pi. And what does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, "V'yasas hayam mutzog eser ba'ama misfasay atzfasay all goyel should be round, saviv b'chomish ba'ama k'masay it should be 5. V'kav, and we read it kuf vav, but it says it in the pasuk kuf vav hey. You see over here without nikudas, kuf vav hey, but we read it so it's a kri and a ksiv. Shleishim ba'ama yosef b'isi saviv 30. In other words, we do 3 times the diameter. It's 10. It says over here 10. But if you take 10 and go 3 times 3 equals 30. This is how we know pi. Right? And we said it's not exact, and well, how could it be? The Gemara, but we said it like the Taisa says, we're trying to teach people and do quick math in Panovich, so it's 1 times 3. You're not going to go into the fractions. Says the Vilna Gaon, I don't know how a person thinks about this stuff and how you come up with these calculations.
He did it on the toilet.
Yeah, he did. But not kav. This is Torah. This is different. No, he didn't do it on the toilet. He says like this. The way it's written is 111. Kuf vav hey. Without the vav achibur. Just the word, kav hey. But we read it kav. So 111 versus 106. If you take 111 divided by 106, 106 divided by 111, you come out with 1.04717. This is the Vilna Gaon 300 years ago. This is what he came up with. Times 3, because the pasuk says a kav, you time it times 3. Times 3 is pi to the 5th placement. You hear this? This is pi sheba pi. 3.4151. What? 1.4. Okay, 1.4. It is 1.4. I just did 5 because I rounded it out. Anyway, it's 479. I'm not joking. Leidak. So I don't know how often you could take 2 numbers and come up with that calculation. This is the Vilna Gaon in the pasuk to explain why the pasuk changed from kavoy to kav. Within that pasuk of pi, only the Vilna Gaon. Okay, next question. If you're in a sukkah, on sukkahs, and you want to take a piece of meat that's stuck between your teeth, are you allowed to go to your schach and pull off a little piece of schach and use it as a toothpick? A. Question number 2 is, could you use it as a baseball bat? I don't know, the guys in England, could you use a piece of schach or a baseball bat? Cricket bat. Yes? No. Yes? Anybody? What's the answer? No? Why is it? It's muktzah. What's the isser? Is it isser d'Rabbanan or d'Oraisa? Anybody? Today we're going to learn that it's isser d'Oraisa. Isser d'Oraisa to use any part of the schach. What if the schach fell down, the whole sukkah fell down? Then it turns into a isser d'Rabbanan. Okay, now we can finally start today's daf. Says the Mishnah, sponsored by, this is the official Mishnah, sponsored by Fischl. By the way, if anybody wants to sponsor Mishnayos, they're available for sponsorships. Yes, we do that. The new guys, yeah, we sponsor the Turning the Pay, whatever. Anywhere to make money. So I don't have to run around the world and collect money. Sukkah Yeshana, talking about collecting money. We have the most phenomenal Chaikel. And why do we have a Chaikel? Because I learned in that Chaikel, and they learned the daf, and we throw ideas off each other, and they help me out with the shir. So they're actually part of the shir. And I don't know everybody scored, but I know at least 2 of them, because that's the only, those are, another person, Eliakim got 100. I think he got one 2 months ago. 100 on Dirshu, probably from the only people in Eretz Yisrael that got 100 on their test. I mean, very, very few people can get 100 on the Dirshu test. And here it is. And you look down here, he got a 98 on something else, a 98 on, he does a lot of stuff. Mishnah Bura, Musar, incredible guys. Anyway, he's getting the bonus. 100% he's getting the bonus. He walks out, don't ask, he has a lot of bonuses. What? I gave him a donation. I don't. I don't have a good memory. I don't have time for chazara. I have to prepare. I used to take the test. I spoke about it a different time. We got to learn the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Sukkah Yeshana, an old sukkah. We're going to see a sukkah meaning that you built 30 days ago, without l'shma. Beis Shammai poislin, ubeis Hillel machshirin. Now, older sukkah. Obviously, we don't pass on Beis Shammai.
We'll see in a second. They say you can't use a sukkah. Now, what do you do? If the sukkah was built more than 30 days before Sukkot, it's considered an older sukkah. The Bishami say puzzle, Beis Hillel says kosher. What's the significance of 30? Because 30 days before Yantif, Darshan Bilchas Chag. So if you're going to build a sukkah within 30 days, you most likely built it because you had in mind what the rabbi already spoke about, the halachas and everything. So you had kavana to build it lishma. Taisa just points out here, a very important halacha. Limaisa, according to this Mishnah, a older sukkah is kosher. We go like Beis Hillel, not like Beis Shammai. But we all know that if you have schach on your sukkah, you should go like this, you should lift it up. So Taisa says, that's a Yerushalmi, based on a Yerushalmi, it's a halacha l'maisa, I looked it up, in the Shulchan Aruch, you should lift up one tefach, because we don't paskin like Beis Shammai, we paskin like Beis Hillel. In fact, you don't have to, you shouldn't have to, but we paskin, you should be machmer, lift up only one tefach, not the entire sukkah, and if you want, it could be less than a tefach, even a sliver, as long as it's the length of the entire sukkah, that's halacha l'maisa. But if you made the sukkah for sukkahs, if you had in mind, let's say Pesach time, you're going to build a sukkah for the mitzvah sukkah, then it's kosher. Everybody agrees. My time to be shaman. Why do you need lishma, building a sukkah? And we're talking sukkah. What does sukkah mean? Sukkah means the schach. Doesn't mean the walls, right? Because everybody's walls are probably 5, 6, 10, 20 years old. Talking about the schach, that's the main part of the sukkah. My time to be shaman. And not every Arab that builds your house has in mind that you should have a sukkah. They don't care. So we're talking about the schach. My time to be shaman. Omakro chag sukkah is shivas yomim lashem. Sukkah asuya l'shem chag bi'inon. Chag sukkah is shivas yomim lashem. Should be for Hashem. You should have in mind for Hashem. Beis Hillel ahu mibayle look at the Rav Sheishas. Beis Hillel says no, very good. There's a passage. We learned something else. The Rav Sheishas from Akiva minayin latzia sukkah she'asurim kol shiva. Here's the halacha. The wood of the sukkah of the schach is aser mid'oraisa. You're not allowed to use your schach for any purpose mid'oraisa. Talmud loymar chag sukkah shivas yomim l'Hashem. So how do we learn it from this pasuk? Chag sukkah shivas yomim l'Hashem. Where do you see in this pasuk that there's an isser to use anything? He explains kishem shechal shem shomayim ala chagiga. So he's playing with the words a little bit. Chag means a yantif. But now he's saying chag means a carbon. There's a carbon chagigo that everybody has to bring. Be'ezer Hashem, when Mashiach comes very soon, this sukkahs, we're going to have to bring a carbon chagigo. We're going to be oilas riyah. Real karbanas, $500 a pop, each person in the family. Chagigo. So just like a chagigo has gedusha to it, until you shecht it, you can't do anything with it. It's kadosh. That same kedusha goes into your sukkah. So if there's kedusha in your sukkah, you can't use it. If you use it, you're oive issa deraisa. It's not a chasidish chumrah. It's a real halacha in the Torah. Shenemar chag sukkah shivas yom l'Hashem ma chag l'Hashem. Just like this chagiga is l'Hashem, af sukkah l'Hashem. So let me ask you a question. So sukkah is over. Now what happens to the schach? It remains kadosh. A carbon remains kaddish until you do something to it. You have to redeem it. You have to shecht it. It doesn't just. So the Magen Avraham says that the kedusha is poikeya. It just dissipates as soon as Sukkot is over. Okay, but nevertheless, there's an isser, not a deraisa, but there's an isser to misuse it, to treat it not nicely, to step on it. And there's a story that there's 2 bachurim. They went to yeshiva, they went to get a faher, and one of them was the mitzuyan, like the top guy in the yeshiva, and the yeshiva didn't accept him except the other guy. It was with the Chavetz Chaim. Thank you. With Chavetz Chaim. And they asked the Chavetz Chaim why. This guy's mitzuyan. He said because he noticed that when he walked out of the faher, he stepped on schach. He wasn't careful. A guy like that, he doesn't need in the yeshiva. The Chavetz Chaim, thank you. Yeah.
Chavetz Chaim say that over afterwards.
They asked halacha l'maisa. Halacha l'maisa. Why is it lashon hara? It's halacha l'maisa. You don't step on schach. Oh, here, Reb Nachman Seltz is b'chol on the Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's lashon hara. Okay, here. You know what a shir we have? The boys say, what's going on here? We have guys that are bigger than the Chavetz Chaim here. They're sitting in the b'chol on the Chavetz Chaim. It's unreal what we have. The boys say unreal. He didn't know. He didn't know. That's unbelievable. Wow. Edit. Okay, now, what happens? What happens if the guy decides he wants to leave the sukkah up for 5 years? Does the kedusha dissipate? So, this is actually machlokes. According to Mordechai does, according to others not. Fine. Right, Hillel, the machlokes. Says the Gemara. What's Bishami going to do? Bishami nami boyle lahachi. Bishami also have this halacha. Everybody agrees you can't use the schach for a baseball bat to beat your kids. Erachanami. Elamai tamai de Bishami. Ksiv kurachrina. There's another pasuk. Chag asukis tasil l'cha shivas yamim. Sukkah asuy l'shem chag be'inon. Rashi says it's a play on words. You read it. Sukkah tasil l'chag. You should make a sukkah for the yontiv. Sukkah asuy l'shem chag be'inon. Ubesilel. Okay, so there's extra pasuk. What do? They already learned from the first pasuk. Amud Beis loisin sukkah b'chayil shemayit. Let's say a person never made a sukkah. He shows up, he's traveling, whatever it is, and he needs to make a sukkah. Can you build a sukkah on chalamayit? Says Beisil, yes. Ubisham Sfir Luke, Rebbe Eliezer, the Omar, Einoizim sukkah b'chayil shemayit. Rebbe Eliezer holds a sukkah that's not built for 7 days is not a sukkah. 0, not even for 1 day. So what happens according to Rebbe Eliezer if your sukkah falls down in the middle of chalamayit? Could you rebuild it? You're not rebuilding a sukkah for 7 days. You're only rebuilding a sukkah for the 3 remaining days. Is that okay? Rabbi Isai? Yes. It's okay. Even according to Rabbi Eliezer. He says, if you start out a sukkah for 7 days and it fell down in the middle, you're allowed to continue, you're allowed to rebuild it. Now, Rav Yehuda Amarav. We have Rav Yehuda all over Shas, hundreds of times. And he always quotes Rav. And also Shmuel. Right here on the spot, Rashi explains, in case you didn't know, Rav Yehuda Talmid Shurav Shmuel. And then he would go around and telling everybody, maybe Rashi sticks in a little kuda here. He waited until his Rebbe was dead. And once he was nifter, he went around to tell everybody his Torah. Okay. Now we're going to halachas of tzitzis. If you make a tzitzis from leftover pieces, in other words, as you're making the fabric, you have leftover strings, you have leftover stuff. One of the things you do, you could see it like in a sack today in Israel, I know in America. You see in sacks, sometimes there's a little of a bump. What happened is, one of the threads ripped, so they take it, they just tie it, and they keep on going. So it's a little thicker and certain. That's called a kite. So he's making a fabric, and he's done with the fabric, and all of a sudden he has a couple strings hanging out. It's not good tzitzis. Why? For only one reason. The reason is because it's not lishma. He didn't make it for the tzitzis. Let's say he had in mind to make those extra tzitzis lishma. Comes out, it's mutter according to Rashi. It's a chiddush, right? You think you have to have a hole and go to the store, buy a pack of tzitzis, but no. As long as you make these strings that are coming out of your beged lishma, it's okay. These are all leftovers, psula. But if you have like balls of thread laying on the floor, kshera. You're allowed to pick up the balls of thread. You didn't make the balls of thread for tzitzis. You don't have to. Now you're inserting them into your beged lishma, and that's kosher. Now, so Rashi explains here, this same Rav Yehuda was going around saying his Torah to different people from his Rebbe Rav, and he bumps into Shmuel. He says, you know what Rav said? Rav and Shmuel, right? The two Gdei Adar. Rav was maybe greater, the Gemara said. So Rav said, he tells Shmuel what Rav said. Yeah, he went afterwards, first Rav, then Shmuel. Shmuel was only great because Rav owed him a favor, kind of thing. Okay, whatever. Omar Ali, and Rav Yehuda says, Shmuel told me, Af minasisin nami. Shmuel Omar Ali. Af minasisin nami psula. It's not true. Even leftover string that's on the floor, you cannot pick it up and make it into tzitzis. Why? The be'ina tviyah l'shma. He holds you need the weaving of the tzitzis also to be l'shma, not just the insertion into the beged. Ask the Gemara, if Beis Hillel, this is Rav. Obviously, Rav goes according to Beis Hillel. So wouldn't wouldn't he agree that the same halacha applies? That you need l'shma by sukkah. Achanami nebai sukkah asu l'shma. You see that by tzitzis you need l'shma, so by sukkah you should also need l'shma. How could they still hold that even if you didn't have any intent that this should be a sukkah, it's a good sukkah? Shani also no makro gedilim tasil lach. Lach l'shem chayvcha. This is a special pasuk by tzitzis that requires l'shma, intent, and not by a sukkah. Achanami, yes, the Gemara, chagasukis tasil l'cha. It says the same exact words. L'cha l'shem chayvcha. Amen bayar le'lemutei gzula. Oh, no, we can't use the pasuk to tell me the chiyuv l'shma. It's going to say that if I steal a sukkah, I'm not yaitza. How do you steal a sukkah? So, according to the Ritva, it's only a portable sukkah that I could steal. If a guy has a sukkah on a pickup truck and I steal the pickup truck, then I'm not yaitza. But you cannot steal something that's attached to the ground because karka and zealous. Real quickly, the first Rebbe of Ger, I'm saying this l'kavod Mendi Arba because he's related to Ger. First Rebbe of Ger is the Chidush Yarim. Chidush Yarim, I don't know if you know, he had 13 children, and basically 12 out of the 13, I think it was 12, 10 to 12, for sure 10, maybe even 12, were nifter while he was alive. Terrible, terrible stuff. And he used to tell people that at one of the Levias, he said, somebody whacked me in my back, and I turned around and I saw it was my friend. He says, sometimes you get a whack in the back, you look around, it's like somebody you hate, so you get upset. But if it's your friend, he's excited to see you, so you turn around and say, Hakadosh Baruch Hu gave him a whack in the back, and he turned around and says, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, ah! So he was excited. That's what he said. He said he had this thing that he could be Menachem people that have tsaras in their life. Anyways, the Chidush Yarim says, now that you know the Chidush Yarim, he says that the Zohar says that a sukkah is there to take only the good things of a yid, to take the good. But if you go and the Kedusha, but if you go into a sukkah that's gzula, then it doesn't have the ability to take the good. It takes the bad also, and that's not good for you. That's why a sukkah gzula is possible. Okay, says the Gemara, Hasam nami bar leila muti gzula. By tzitzis also you can't have a stolen pair of tzitzis. Says the Gemara, Hasam ksiv krach rina vasu lahem mishalahem. In fact, there's another pasuk that says it, the gzula. So okay, fine. So now we know that the lishma is by tzitzis, not by sukkah. Sukkah has a problem of gzula, so does tzitzis. Tzitzis has gzula and lishma, not sukkah. Returning to Daf Amud Beis, sponsored by the MDY Tehillim Group. For all those who need shidduchim, refus, and yeshuas, please join Tehillim.8mindaf.com. The official Mishnah, sponsored by Official. Oh, I forgot to mention the schedule. There will be a shir right here in the Beis Medrash tomorrow on Shabbos, 1 hour before Mincha. I don't know what time Mincha is. And a Motzei Tisha B'Av, 2 shiurim. The first one is going to be where we're holding, and that starts at 10 o'clock. I know it's late. You don't have to show up if you don't want. I'll be here, unfortunately, with the second shir. I don't know how I'm going to do it, because I don't perform well after Tanesim. 2 shiurim we have to do to make up. So we have something video. The same shir that I'm giving on Shabbos, I'm going to do after the shir on Motzei Tisha B'Av. Says the Heilige Mishnah. You guys remember this from school? Shmaka stuff. From Yoni's thing. If you make your sukkah underneath a tree, this is a very common problem. There's a lot of branches everywhere, a lot of different things. Ki'ilu asa b'soich habayis. What does it mean? It should say, it's possible. It's as if you made your sukkah inside a house. The Gemara is going to explain why using such a long lashon. Sukkah, agabi sukkah, it's unbelievable. Imagine without this sefer from Kol Elshon, I'd probably sit there at night building these models to be cool. This is a lot cooler, this is a lot nicer. Sukkah, agabi sukkah. I don't know if you ever had this, but my children, at least in Chicago, they had, just remember, there's a kid in Chicago, we're talking about the 9 days, a kid in Chicago got killed by a car less than a day, like a day ago. Unbelievable. Stam is just saying, every year, 9 days. But the kids in Chicago, they build these models, like every kid builds another, so I had to sit there every year and build for my kids. All right, fine. Sukkah agabe sukkah. You can sit in the upper one, right? It's less than 20 amas. You can sit in the upper one, but you cannot sit in the bottom one because there's a pasuk that says you cannot have two schachs. How far away are they from each other? That's a different discussion in the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda Omer im ein diurim bel yoina. If nobody lives in the upper one, then the bottom one is kosher. Omar Rava leishanu elo beilan shetzilosai meruba mechamasai. This problem is a tree like this. You have a tree that has a lot of shade, so it's providing the shade, and it's pasul shade. Why? Because it's mechuber lekarka. This tree is pasul. So memela, that's when it's aser. That's when it's pasul. But when it's very sparse like this, there's barely any leaves here, it's barely creating any schach, so then it's kosher. Okay? This sugya, for instance, is negea l'maisa. Very important stuff. Rashi actually brings one case. But here in Eretz Yisrael, you live in an apartment building, and the person right above you has laundry lines. And the laundry lines, maybe there's lava between them. So all of a sudden I have a piece this big. It's beautiful halachas about it. There is no lava like that. Why? First of all, some say lava doesn't work if you want to be machmer and ruin something. It only works when you need it. But some say that it doesn't work because it's not providing the shade. It's only a halachic kind of mechitza, but not schach. Okay, fine. Halacha l'maisis. But we had in America a lot of times you have a branch and these massive oak trees, whatever they are, that come right across the sukkah. You have to know. Says the Gemara, Mimai, how do you know this halacha that depends how much shade the tree provides? Now the Gemara is going to say, listen, there's a reason why the Mishnah used such an interesting lashon. Just say, listen, psula. This is what it's coming to tell us. The bias that it has the same halacha as a bias is going to see soon that a sukkah inside a house and a sukkah on the trees learn from the same word. So a house, typically the roof provides more shade than sun. So too, this tree that we're talking about in our Mishnah is the same kind of idea. It provides a lot of shade, more shade than sun. Ask the Gemara. Who cares? Even in a case where it doesn't provide any shade, not any shade, very, very little shade. At the end of the day, you're combining pasul schach, that's from the tree, together with kosher schach. Now, Rashi and Tosfos learn, just so you understand, very simple pshat, they both learn that the bottom sukkah doesn't have enough schach. It itself is chamasa meruba mitzilasa. Together with the tree, it becomes tzilasa meruba chamasa, becomes enough shade. That is the problem, as the Gemara. You're using the pasul schach to create kosher schach. That's not going to work. Why? Because if the sukkah has enough schach, so then that little branch that's coming over is going to be batal, nothing. It's not going to do anything for me. Even if I remove whatever's below it, I still have enough schach. The other Rishonim learn differently. Fine. Anytime Rashi and Tosfos could agree on something, we're good enough for that. The other Rishonim are learning that whatever the tree is over, you have to cancel that part of the schach. Okay. Talking about this case right over here. Oh, by the way, here's a beautiful picture. I noticed afterwards. They did a really good job in terms of what I just said in terms of Rashi. If you look closely, you see schach that's kosher over here, but it's not really touching. There's a lot of gaps here. Together with the tree, you have a nice amount of schach. Says the Gemara, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about, he took the tree and he intertwined it with the schach. You don't really see a difference. It's mamish, it's one piece. Because Tosfos points out, we're going to have the Mishnah later about shpudim. You have pieces of metal. They go through the schach. It makes the schach puzzle. Because over there you can see the metal. Over here, it's all green. He took it and he just went like this. It's within. The puzzle's within the kosher. And therefore what? the puzzle becomes batal b'roiv. Becomes batal b'roiv. So it's such a non-chiddush. The Gemara says, you guys are thinking to yourselves, this is a major chiddush. What's going? Why should it be kosher? The Gemara says, Ma'ila Meirav. So if you take the puzzle schach and it's batal b'roiv in the kosher schach, so then what's a great chiddush? Listen, I'll tell you, let's just back up 1 second so you understand a little better. In order to have tzilas and merubim chamasa, you need 51% shade. Let's call it, just for argument's sake, 51% shade. What happened was you only have 50% shade. One little tiny leaf attached to the tree is going to push you over to the 51. Says Gemara, if it's inside your 50%, it doesn't do anything. I don't even look at it. Who cares? So yes, I got a tzilas and merubim chamasa from it, but it's 100% batal. It's 1 out of 50. Now you understand it better. Says Gemara, maybe you should make some sort of gzeira. You're not going to remember next year to intertwine it and make. You're just going to let it go 5 feet above. So the chiddush is that I'm not geyser. Maybe you're not going to intertwine them. That's the right word. That's also not a chiddush. It says mefurish. Hitlo les hagefen is a mishnah. You take the grapevine, ve'esad las. Here's the grapevine. Here's a grapevine, and you put it right on top of your sukkah. In Chicago, wherever's Zoicha, there's a restaurant on the van. I always pass by this restaurant, and I always was wondering what it is. And finally, I see it here in the Gemara. I don't have a picture of that restaurant. I forgot the name over there. It's a non-kosher restaurant. But they have this. Literally looks like this. Outdoors, they have just a canopy of gourds. So I guess the gourds, these pumpkins, whatever, they're vines. They grow, they climb. We're talking about climbers over here. Ivy, grapes, and gourds. Okay? So Hitler has a gourds, glass, Vesa kisois, ivy. By the way, very not good idea if you live in America to have ivy growing up your house. Terrible, terrible idea. It grows very, very quickly, and it destroys the mortar in your brick. Stam, as a contractor, I'm telling you. Vesika chagabam psula. And then you took it, like in this picture. If you look closely, you'll see that the vines are underneath, and then he went and he put schach on top. He has the puzzle schach because it's mechuber lekarka, and he put the schach on top. Psula. If it's a lot more, kosher schach, he snipped it on the bottom, so it's no longer mechuber sheira. Then it's kosher. Hey chidami, what's the case? When it's still attached to the ground and you didn't mix it up with the kosher schach, of course it's possible. You're getting to the tzilas. According to Rashi and Taisus again, you're getting to the kosher schach. You're getting to tzilasa miruba mechamasa only through non-kosher schach. So of course it's possible. In that case, by hidla sagefen, he did mix it in with the kosher. And that goof is the chiddush that we don't make exer, that you might not do it next time. So if so, what's the chiddush by us, by a tree? It's the same exact case. He took the tree, the same enemy live the eved. This is a tremendous chiddush. Over here, you want to be mevatel isur lechatchila. You're taking it isur, you're taking this non-kosher schach and mixing it into kosher schach so that the kosher schach should be batel mevatel b'roiv. You're being mevatel lechatchila. So I think you can't do that. Komashmal you could. Why? I don't know really, but you could. Next case. Sukkah al gabi sukkah. Double sukkah. Why is that also? So we're bringing a pasuk that says in the pasuk you shouldn't have a sukkah on top of another sukkah. Mamish like that. Otherwise, what's the problem? You have two schachs that are kosher, and it's double schach. It's an extra good schach. What's the problem? No. It says in the pasuk, basukah is teishvu. V'loi basukah shedachas sukkah. V'loi basukah shedachas ilan. V'loi basukah shedachas bayis. So right away the Gemara asks, Adarabba, basukah is teishvu. You should sit in two sukkahs. It's great to have a sukkah. Welcome from Yerushalayim. It's great to have two sukkahs, one on top of the other. Don't forget, we had the other sugya. How's it in the Torah? without a vav. So Yeshein L'Mesoires, it says it in singular. So it says you should sit in one sukkah, not two. Maybe I hold Yeshein L'Mikra. It's the way I read it. Says Taisves on the bottom, the last little line. Everybody holds that there's a reason why the Torah wrote it differently than you read it. The question is, what's the ikar? But I can't avoid the fact that it says in singular, so I'm going to learn that chiddush. Omer Rabbi Yirmiyah says Rabbi Yirmiyah. What? What do you mean? If I want singular? No, because the Klai Yisrael, that's the Klai station. All of you should sit in. You don't want all Klai Yisrael sitting in one sukkah. It's going to be a problem. Think, if we stop here, just pause for 1 second. How do you make both sukkahs, the up and the bottom, according to everybody kosher? Think, how's it possible? It's a riddle. How do you make both sukkahs puzzle? How do you make the upper one kosher and the bottom one puzzle? And how do you make the bottom one kosher and the upper one puzzle? A riddle. Think. Okay. If you're watching the video, pause, try to figure it out yourself. What is the case? What are the four cases? When the bottom sukkah doesn't provide enough shade, it's pasal schach. So it's not a sukkah at all. So I can sit in the bottom one because its schach is not schach. And I can sit in the top one because it could hold me up. Why not? So in Mela, we have two sukkahs. The upper and the bottom one are both kosher. What's the problem, Mendy? Oh, okay, fine. But it's for the riddle. You don't like this kind of riddles. Trick riddle. Why? It's a sukkah that has schach. It's just puzzle schach. Halachically. But physically it is. Hello, the guy is sitting on the second floor? What? He's sitting in the midair? He's sitting on the second floor. He lives on, there's two families living there. I'm answering. There's two sukkahs. It's two physical sukkahs. There's a family, the Freemans live on top, and the Cohens live on the bottom. There's two families living there, and they both are yaitza. Halachically, it's not a sukkah, but physically. Exactly. How's it possible? It's one sukkah with two floors, and they're both kosher. That's it. Okay? That's how it is. Are you arguing with the Moraim now also?
No.
Only in the Chaim. Okay, good.
There wasn't the Chaim. That's
So I'm sorry if you can argue with it. Okay.
It's lashon hard to say that. That's the question.
You see the Gemara all the time. They say this guy did wrong, whatever. How do both of them become kosher? So Noam and Mendy both didn't understand. I hear the kasha, it's a good kasha. It's not a real sukkah on the bottom. Okay, fine. It's not a good riddle. How do you make both of them puzzle? They both have good shade. So the bottom one is for sure puzzle. Why? Because it's a sukkah below a sukkah. This is also not such a great riddle. Why? Because it's a trick. The upper one is above 20 amas. Okay, so I found a way that the upper one is possible by itself because it's above 20 amas. And sometimes the bottom one is kosher, but the upper one is puzzle. How? Top of Yud Amud Aleph. Because the bottom one has enough schach, so Mela it's kosher. But the upper one doesn't have enough schach. So again, you're going to ask me the same question. It's not a good sukkah. Fine. Now, the only way this trick works is why? They both have to be within 20. Because if the upper one is above 20, you hear the chap, then it's pasal schach. Because it's above 20. And pasal schach is going to start to the bottom schach, it's going to make the bottom puzzle. You know what? Should we stop here? Can we just do one more line? If both of them have tzilas and ruba, they both have good schach. And the upper one is within 20 amma. Have a wonderful day and Shabbos and a meaningful fast.